was a young girl when I first learned that it's the small moments that make champions. It was 1972. I was 10 years old. I was in the third day of the Country Club Swim and Dive Championships just outside Washington, D.C. And I had my best event coming up, which at the time was the 100-foot breaststroke. And I had a main rival, and I could see her warming up in the pool. I could see the white bathing cap bobbing up and down. And I'm thinking to myself, she looks really fast. She looks kind of sleek. She looks like she wants to win. And I'm getting nervous. And so she pulls herself out of the pool and walks by me, and my father can see that I'm just really getting nervous. So he decides it's time to tell me a story. And so he says, remember your Uncle Platt? And I think, yeah, oh yeah, Uncle Platt. He finished just out of the medals in the 1908 Olympics. He was one of the finest athletes in the first 50 years of the 20th century, but he had finished just out of the medals in the 1908 Olympics. And so my father says, well, in the 1912 Olympics, he's coming up on his last jump in his best event, which was the standing high jump. And he looks at the guy who's in first place, and he says to himself, he starts a little tape, he says, well, he doesn't look any bigger than I am. He doesn't look any stronger than I am. He doesn't look any more athletic than I am. Why should he beat me? I'm going to win. And with that, my Uncle Platt went out and he leapt in the 1912 Olympics to a world record gold medal, 5 feet 4 inches. And finishing right behind him was my Uncle Ben. It was the only siblings to go 1-2 in the same Olympic event. So a couple hours later, I'm behind the blocks, my little 10-year-old skinny self in a black bathing suit with an orange stripe going down the middle, and I look at my competitor, still in the white bathing cap, and I say to myself, well, she doesn't look any taller than I am. She couldn't have trained as hard as I did. There's no reason why she should beat me, so I'm going to win. And I dove in, and I frantically swam to a league record in the 100-foot breaststroke and got a big trophy, which I brought home. And that was a big moment of triumph for me. Now, I wish I could say that everything was that easy for the rest of my teenage years. You know, you've got some talent, a little bit of success, you work hard, everything goes well. Well, that's not exactly how it worked in everything in my life. In fact, the toughest foe I faced was something that started at the age of 14 and went till the age of 22. And that was, I had a very, very serious eating disorder called bulimia. Like many other women of my age, the problem was nobody knew anyone who'd gotten better. Nobody knew how to get better. So there was this collective hopelessness, but it was my secret. Nobody knew about it. And so I had success. I was in a prep school in Washington, D.C. I did well. I went to Harvard. I got married. I looked successful. I looked like I had it all. But it was only in my darkest moment of failure and despair and depression that I found the seeds of what I needed to do to actually overcome my biggest foe. And that was what was missing for me in all those years of success. And I didn't know what that quality was that allowed me to get better first an hour at a time, then a day at a time, then a week at a time, a month at a time, a year at a time, a decade at a time, until I can stand before you today with 30 years of recovery. And I found out what that quality was when I went back to school a few years ago to get a master's degree in this new science of applied positive psychology, the science of happiness. So I'm at the University of Pennsylvania, and I meet Angela Duckworth, and I find out she's studying this quality she defines as grit, passion, and perseverance in pursuit of long-term goals. And I said to myself, that's what I developed. That was the piece that was missing. I had success, but I didn't have grit. And ironically, it took my toughest opponent to find out what I needed to do to get it. Now, grit is the word of the year. You hear it everywhere. You hear it in commencement speeches. You hear it in the sports pages. You see it on ESPN. You see it in the State of the Union. Everyone's talking about grit. Why? Because it is such an exciting concept. And we now know how to measure it thanks to Angela Duckworth and the grit scale. And here are just a few of the things that she's discovered that her grit scale can measure. The first is that it now trumps all measurements of who succeeds at West Point, a horribly difficult environment. But your grit score now predicts who survives at West Point. It also predicts who finals at the National Spelling Bee at the age of 12. So as young as 12, the grit scale is a predictor of who's tough enough not to be a quitter. And then finally, it also predicts who will finish and teach for America, a 2-year notoriously difficult environment, where a lot of people just don't have what it takes to be put in these tough schools, who aren't even trained as teachers. And so here's the problem. We all need grit. But we just don't know how to get tougher, and that's the problem. And the reason why is we're just coming up on the end of what's called the self-esteem movement, which has been a horrible failure, because the only thing this self-esteem movement did was tell kids they were great just because they existed, not because they did anything. They were just, everyone's a winner. Or as the dodo bird says, all have won and all must have prizes. And the only thing the self-esteem movement did create, ironically, is narcissists and sociopaths. So let me tell you a little bit about what we've seen as a result of the self-esteem movement. Now, this may look like a really lovely playground to all of you, a sweet little place where we can all take people. Well, this to me is a tragedy. This is my neighborhood park. This is what it now looks like as of 3 days ago. And all American parks look like this. We have dumbed down all of the playgrounds in the United States. So if you fall onto a pillow of wood chips. Nobody skins their knees. Nobody gets hurt. Nobody falls. And so psychologists say that we have this generation of children who are too anxious to climb a tree. They're afraid to take risks. They're afraid to fall. And if they do, their parents are going to run up behind them and file a lawsuit. When I was a child, there was a swing that was so high I thought I could swing up to the sky. Same thing with the slide. I'd go down the slide, and you know what? I sometimes skinned my knee because there was gravel, but that doesn't exist anymore. So the dumbing down of playgrounds has been a huge problem. We also have the slowest generation of all time. The most common race now is what's called the color run. And guess what? No one gets a time because it doesn't matter because everyone's a winner. And so all these American racing officials are saying we don't even have competitions anymore. We have parades, which is true. So the average American male marathon runner now is 44 minutes slower than the average man in previous generations. They see this for women, they see it in swimming, but this is the color run. By the way, I just found out that the Tough Mudders don't even have times associated with them. People don't get times. And guess what? Everybody knows there's winners and losers, but not this generation. And we have now higher education system where everyone gets an A. In fact, it is so inflated that it's called the ordinary A. In the 1960s, everybody got a C. That was the average grade. And now it's an A. So when you go to interview for a job, nobody even knows what your GPA means. And so this culture of mediocrity has taken over the country. Let me tell you about a few things I've observed just in raising my own 3 children in the Washington area. I've got plenty of stories about what I've seen my kids, achieve and not achieve and what they've been rewarded for. Well, the first one is called the fun run. So my kids' elementary school used to have a fun run. So when my oldest son went through, I remember he trained for it, he ran a lot, he looked forward to it. And I have to tell you, a lot of the kids look forward to it. Not everybody, because not everyone's a good runner, and not everybody wanted to really exhaust themselves. But I remember the boys would sit around in my kitchen, they'd talk about it, so there was a fun run that year. By the time my 3rd child went through the elementary school, it had been eliminated. And I asked, what happened to the fun run? And I was told, well, the parents were complaining because their children's feelings were hurt, that they weren't winning. And so they got rid of it. That's just one story. Now, a story that really sticks with me is a story of we joined a little summer swim team just outside Washington called Montgomery Square. A little hole in the ground, like a concrete deck and a little pool. But the minute we joined, we were told that they had this extraordinary legacy. An Olympic gold medalist, a world champion, another person who had gotten 7th in the Olympics, a 4-time NCAA winner. And so my husband and I look around and we go, well, where's the record board? And a parent said to us with a straight face, well, we hid the record board because we're afraid the children are going to get discouraged and give up. So I was elected the A-Rep. The first thing I did was I commissioned the largest record board ever made for summer swim team swimming. In fact, that's what I was told. So this is the record board, And I embedded the pictures of these amazing swimmers. I brought them back from the Cayman Islands, from everywhere that they lived, and we had a party. And we celebrated it, and the kids loved it. And this young man in particular, he would pull a chair up in front of the record board, and he would stare at it, and he fixated on this one time, the 100-meter backstroke. And he would sit there and sit there and sit there and look at it. And he said to himself, I think I can win. I think I can break that. And so one memorable Saturday morning, I'll never forget, there were 7 timers on his lane. Everybody's standing up. I'm the announcer, so I'm announcing what's happening. And I say, this young man is going to try to break the record. And so we're all screaming, and you know what? He broke the record by 1/10 of a second. And he said to me later, Mrs. Miller, thank you so much for getting that record board, because if you hadn't gotten that record board, I wouldn't have even known what to shoot for. And other records got broken, by the way. So that's just from my own life that I have seen this issue of everyone's a winner. But what I've done is I'm a performance coach. I work with people all over the world to set and achieve goals. And I'm a student of goal setting and its intersection with the science of happiness. And so I've thought a lot about grit, how I developed grit. I cultivated grit in order to overcome my eating disorder. And I know that it's something we can cultivate. And in fact, Angela Duckworth has found that only half of our ability to be gritty is what we're born with, and the other half is what we choose to think about and do every single day. And so there are 3 things that I have found that I believe if you choose to do these 3 things differently every day, you too can become grittier. We all have a shot at this. This is not reserved for Olympians. This is for all of us. We can all get grittier, and we need it. So the first thing I have found is that people who have grit, they ask themselves, why not? They say, why not? Why not go for that challenge? So when faced with something bigger than them, they don't say, why should I do it? It's too hard. Why me? They say, why not me? And so my first example is an Olympic gold medalist who I've had the privilege of growing up and watching since she was a very young girl. So for those of you who've been living under a rock, this is Katie Ledecky. And in 2012, she went to the London Olympics, but before that, she's a 14-year-old having lunch with her coach, who always had goal-setting lunches with her, all of his athletes. And he said, well, what are your goals for this year? And she goes, well, now mind you, she had never won an international race. So she's 14 years old, and she goes, well, to go to the Olympic trials meet. And he said, but Katie, what is the most amazing thing that could happen to you this year? And she goes, to go to the Olympics? And he said, say it again, to go to the Olympics. And she said, to go to the Olympics. Well, guess what? With that one little decision, why not? Why not go to the Olympics? She went to the 2012 Olympics. She swam right in the middle of the pool next to the defending world champion on British soil. And she blew her away. And it all started by asking herself, why not? A few weeks ago, some of you may have seen this gentleman. His name is Sir Nicholas Winton, and he was living a life of privilege in England, age of 28, and Second World War was breaking out. And word got out that families were trying to get their children out, and mostly Jewish families were trying to get their children out and couldn't get them out. And he flew to Prague, and he got himself an apartment with no training, no background, no knowledge of how to do this. And he saved close to 700 children who have gone on to have families and grandchildren. And when interviewed about this, he said, well, I've always operated under the assumption that if it's not impossible, there has to be a way to do it. And the reason why I'm standing in front of you today is because I too asked myself, why not? I was sitting in 1984, not long after I hit my last bottom, in despair, in this meeting, and a woman starts to speak across the room from me, and she says, my name is Betsy, and I'm recovering from bulimia one day at a time. And I just remember I sat straight up, and I said, what? People use all those words in one sentence together? There are people who are getting better? Who are they? Who is this woman? What is her story? And she goes on to tell this story about how she's overcoming bulimia. And in that moment, my whole world turned upside down, because I had hope. I had hope. And I said to myself, why not me? If she can do it, why not me? And because of that, I went on to set bigger and better goals. But it all started that one night when I said to myself, why not? And so if you want to be grittier, start by asking yourself, why not? The second thing I found that gritty people do is they change the channel in their brains. They find ways to go to another place when they're facing difficulty. They want to give up. It's hard. They want to quit. All of those things. They change the channel in their brain. And the first example I'm going to give you is a little bit extreme. And it is from the Vietnam War. This is what's called the Hanoi Hilton, where the highest ranking naval POWs were housed. And the torture there was exquisite and extreme, absolutely extreme. And the highest ranking POW in there was Admiral James Stockdale. And he set the tone for the other POWs. And he had studied philosophy in his time at Stanford, and he had learned that it's not what happens to you, it's what you make of it in your mind is what matters. And so he would spend many hours, dealing with philosophy, and he would draw algorithms in the sand around him, and he would spend all night imagining himself standing up against the torture. He would see himself standing up. And as he got poked with a bayonet in his back as he walked into the torture room, he would say to himself over and over and over again, do not show fear, do not show fear, do not show fear. And he's the one who inspired everybody else, not that they weren't tough enough as it was, but because he said to himself, what's the channel I need to be on? He was able to inspire the others to continue to do the same in the harshest of all situations for 8 years. And again, back to my recovery, it's the slogans. Some people use religious slogans. Some people have a song that comes to mind. Some people, it's a person who comes to mind. And for me, it was the dumbest, simple little phrases you can imagine. The one that got me out of more trouble than any others was one day at a time. One day at a time. Because it would hijack my brain in moments of indecision. When I was afraid I would do something self-destructive, I would say one day at a time, first things first. The first bite is the best. Easy does it. Attitude of gratitude. Slogans. Slogans help. So if you want to be grittier, learn how to change the channel in your brain and go to the best channel for you. And the third thing that I find gritty people do is they create a team around them. And they ask themselves every single day, who can I positively connect to today? Who can be on my team and whose team can I be on? In fact, the newest research on success is showing that the people who end up at the top of the success ladder are the ones who give. The givers, not the takers and not the matchers. It's the givers. So gritty people build a team around them for all kinds of reasons. They do it to comfort themselves when they have setbacks. They brainstorm. They lick their wounds. They keep going. Because remember, grit is about long-term goals. You need a team. We all need a team. No one succeeds alone. In fact, one of the first things I heard when I got into my program was, Caroline, you can't keep what you don't give away. You can't keep what you don't give away. Because I had to keep turning around and giving to others what I had been so fortunate to find, which was recovery. And then another thing you find is athletes. So in rowing teams, one of the things you see is that when you're given this very difficult erg test, if you put very skilled, competent rowers alone in rooms, they get a score. But when you put them in the same room, guess what? Everybody gets a better score. So what you find is it's not the individual kind of strength of the rowers, it's who they are in harmony. And the same thing is true of distance running. When you have elite runners, or really any runners training alone, and you bring them together to train as a pack, everybody gets better. And we've seen this, there's a scientific term for it that I'll get to, but this is Stephen Curry. There's in sports, what you see also is the plus-minus factor. For those of you who are not familiar with the plus-minus factor, what it means is when this person steps onto the basketball court, everybody plays better. They get more assists, more free throws, more baskets, more everything. So when Stephen Curry sets foot on the basketball court, right now he has the highest plus-minus factor, everybody plays better. And that's what we all need. We all need to have people with high plus-minus factors on our court, and we need to do the same for them. And what this is also is this heliotropic effect. We're all living beings. We all turn towards the sun. We all turn towards the light. That's what nurtures us. That's what gives us strength. That's what gives us inspiration. And in companies, it's called being a positive energizer. There are consultants who go into organizations and they map out where are the people who inspire and motivate others. And it's your proximity to those people who actually are the ones who predict your success in that organization. So if you want to be grittier, wake up every day and say, who can I positively connect with today? And so what's the appeal? So it's hard. It's hard being gritty because you're going to fail. You're going to not always succeed at everything. If you get a trophy, it could be 10 years in the future. My recovery was endless. It took years, so it's hard, and people don't like to be uncomfortable. But here's some interesting research, and it's called the no pain, no gain research. At the end of every day, we all scan our days, whether we know it or not, for the things that we're proud of, and the things that make us, confident and give us self-esteem. And it's never the easy things, it's the hard things. It's the things we did outside of our comfort zone that make us, proud of ourselves. So if we just do easy things, we feel mediocre. But when we do hard things, we become confident and we develop grit. And sometimes being gritty is its own reward in the most unlikely of situations, one of which I had in August this year. I was competing at the National Swim Championships after this long, difficult road of, one day at a time, doing the right thing, taking care of myself, raising my children to not be obsessed with food, just doing the best I could. And so I see my swim coach from 34 years earlier, also competing in the meet. And I went up to her and I said, Stephanie, I want you to know that 34 years ago, I swam for all the wrong reasons. You knew me when I was defeated and depressed and bloated, and I had this secret. And I said, but today, this is my reward. My reward is I'm competing today for all of the right reasons. I'm here because I love it, and I'm here because I have done these hard things day after day. And it didn't matter if I got a medal. It didn't matter what I got, because the reward was simply being there. And so what I want to do is I want to challenge all of you to take what I'm calling the Authentic Grit Challenge, where you decide to say, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to do 3 things differently. 3 things. I'm going to ask myself, why not? I'm going to ask myself, who can I connect with today? And I'm going to say to myself, what channel do I need to be on? And so imagine you have all of these seconds every single day. You have 86,400 seconds when you can choose to take these moments to become a champion in your own life. And so imagine if you wake up and you do these things. Well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to become more resilient. You're going to live a life that's without regret. You're going to be bold. You're going to inspire other people to be that way too. And the world will change because of it. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, that is an idea worth spreading. And thank you very much.